Subscribe if you hate Karens and comment what country you're watching from. The hum of the engine finally died down as I guided my yellow Lamborghini Revuelto into the driveway, the day's drudgery clinging to me like static. My phone blinked a pathetic 2%, a digital cry for help mirroring my own depleted energy reserves. All I craved was the sanctuary of my home, a hot meal, and blessed silence. But the instant my headlights swept across my property, painting the familiar scene in stark relief, a jolt of adrenaline ripped through me, shattering my exhaustion. I slammed on the brakes, the tires squealing in protest against the sudden stop. There it was, bathed in the artificial glow of my car's beams, my pride and joy, my automotive masterpiece, still parked exactly where I had left it that morning. But something was terribly, irrevocably wrong. Adorning the vibrant yellow canvas of the windshield, mocking its sleek lines and aerodynamic curves, was a massive, garish, "Sold" sign. The bold red lettering screamed against the white background, an obscene declaration of theft and betrayal. My initial reaction was disbelief, a desperate clinging to the hope that this was some elaborate, albeit cruel, prank. Perhaps some neighborhood kids, emboldened by the approaching darkness, had decided to play a joke. But the cold knot tightening in my stomach refused to be ignored. This felt different. This felt targeted. A rustle of paper pulled my gaze downwards. Wedged beneath the windshield wiper, almost obscuring the Lamborghini's iconic emblem, was a pamphlet. It was glossy, professional, and unmistakably from Prestige Motors, the local luxury car dealership known for catering to the opulent tastes of the city's elite. They weren't the kind of business that randomly distributes flyers in quiet suburban neighborhoods. The implication was horrifyingly clear. Someone had intentionally brought them here, specifically targeting my car. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the rising panic in my mind. I lurched out of the car, my legs feeling strangely disconnected from my brain, each step heavy with dread. I snatched the pamphlet, its expensive paper feeling like sandpaper against my trembling fingers. The sleek images of Bentleys and Rolls Royces seemed to leer at me, their silent judgment amplifying my growing sense of violation. I had to know what was happening. I had to understand. I bolted towards the house, fumbling with my keys, the metallic clatter, a discordant soundtrack, to my mounting anxiety. Throwing the door open, I stumbled inside, leaving my briefcase and the offensive pamphlet discarded on the floor. My mind raced, desperately trying to piece together the fragments of information, to find a logical explanation for the surreal scene unfolding before me. The only tool I had left, the last bastion of hope in this rapidly spiraling nightmare, was my home security system. I fumbled with the app on my phone, the dwindling battery life a cruel reminder of my own vulnerability. Finally, the live feed flickered to life, displaying crystal-clear footage of my driveway from earlier that day. I scrolled back through the hours, my breath held captive in my chest, each second a painful eternity. And then I saw it. At exactly 2:17 p.m., the unthinkable happened, captured in excruciating detail by the unwavering lens of my security camera. My jaw dropped, my knees threatened to buckle, and the air seemed to vanish from my lungs. There she was, Karen Daniels, our resident HOA busybody, the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood aesthetics, and the bane of my existence. She approached my Lamborghini with an air of smug authority, a clipboard clutched in her hand like a weapon. Her signature outfit, the crisp black blazer, the unforgiving black pants, and the pearl earrings that screamed, "Suburban power player," only amplified the sense of impending doom. Trailing behind her were two men, their khaki pants and bland expressions marking them as the epitome of suburban conformity. Karen, leading her silent henchmen, looked like she was on a mission. She circled my Lamborghini, her eyes scanning every inch of its gleaming surface with a critical gaze as if inspecting a flawed product. She tapped the hood, ran her hand along the spoiler, and even peered into the interior, her expression unreadable. Then she began to gesture wildly, pointing and outlining invisible flaws to her companions, as if giving a guided tour of a neglected relic. Each exaggerated movement felt like a punch to the gut, a further dismantling of my hard-earned achievement. One of the men, the taller of the two, reached into his briefcase and produced a thick envelope. He handed it to Karen, who accepted it, with a practiced air of nonchalance. She didn't even bother to count the contents, her confidence radiating like a heat wave. She simply tucked the envelope into her oversized handbag, the transaction complete, the deal sealed with silent complicity. The sight of the cash disappearing into her purse sent a wave of nausea washing over me. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft, blatant and brazen, orchestrated by the woman who held herself up as the moral compass of our community. With a final, triumphant glance at my Lamborghini, Karen, with cold efficiency, taped the sold sign. Across the windshield, its offensive message now permanently emblazoned on my memory. She then turned, her heels clicking against the pavement, and walked away as if she had just closed a major business deal. Her head held high, her posture radiating an arrogance that bordered on sociopathic. The men followed in her wake, their silence amplifying the gravity of the situation. I stood there, paralyzed, watching the replay of the scene over and over again, hoping that somehow I had misinterpreted what I was seeing. But the truth was undeniable. Karen Daniels had orchestrated the illegal sale of my Lamborghini, right in my own driveway in broad daylight. The audacity of it was breathtaking. The sheer violation of it was unbearable. That car wasn't just a vehicle to me. It was the culmination of years of sacrifice, the tangible result of countless late nights and early mornings. It was a symbol of my success, a reminder of how far I had come. It was a custom-built machine, designed to my exact specifications, a rolling work of art that reflected my personality and my passion. I had waited a year to take delivery of it, patiently enduring the delays and the logistical hurdles, all in anticipation of the day I could finally call it my own. And now, Karen Daniels, in her twisted sense of entitlement, had decided that it didn't belong to me. She had decided that it was tacky, that it didn't fit her vision of the perfect suburban landscape. She had decided that she had the right to take it away from me, to sell it for her own personal gain, with utter disregard for my feelings and my rights. I knew that Karen had always harbored a resentment towards my Lamborghini. She had made veiled comments about its ostentatiousness, its inappropriateness for our family-friendly neighborhood, and its supposed contribution to the downfall of civilized society. But I had always dismissed her complaints as the petty grievances of a bitter woman. I had never imagined that her animosity would escalate to this level. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted, a fiery inferno that threatened to consume me whole. This wasn't just about a car. This was about power, control, and the abuse of authority. This was about Karen Daniels's unwavering belief that she was above the law, that she could do whatever she wanted, consequences be damned. I had to stop her. I had to make her understand the gravity of her actions. I had to hold her accountable for the damage she had caused. Fueled by rage and a burning desire for justice, I stormed out of my house and marched towards Karen Daniels's residence, located 2 blocks away. The distance seemed to shrink with each stride, my anger propelling me forward with relentless force. My mind raced, formulating the words I would unleash upon her, the accusations I would hurl, the righteous fury I would express. I envisioned her face, her smug expression melting into a mask of guilt and regret. I fantasized about the satisfaction of watching her crumble under the weight of her own hypocrisy. I arrived at her doorstep, my knuckles white as I pounded on the door with unrestrained force. The sound echoed through the quiet suburban street, disrupting the tranquility of the evening. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, revealing Karen Daniels in all her self-righteous glory. She stood there, framed by the warm light of her immaculate home, her pearl earrings gleaming like polished weapons. She looked me dead in the eye, her gaze unwavering, her expression devoid of any remorse. There was no hint of guilt, no flicker of shame, only a cold, calculated defiance. Her demeanor only intensified my rage. "You weren't using it," she stated, her voice dripping with condescension. "And the HOA voted. It's being repurposed." Her words were like a slap in the face, a further insult to my intelligence and my dignity. The audacity of her blatant lie left me speechless for a moment. "That's not legal," I finally managed to choke out, my voice trembling with suppressed fury. "You can't just sell my car, it's my property." She simply smiled, a chilling, smug expression that sent shivers down my spine. "Check your mailbox," she replied, her voice laced with a perverse satisfaction. She then proceeded to attempt to shut the door in my face. Her level of manipulation made me want to see just how far she was willing to get away with things. I sprinted back to my house, my mind whirling with confusion and apprehension. What was she talking about? What could possibly be waiting for me in my mailbox? I reached my property, yanked open the mailbox, and rummaged through the junk mail and bills until I found it. A neatly folded document bearing the official-looking letterhead of the HOA. My heart sank as I recognized the familiar font and the official seal. I unfolded the notice with trembling hands and began to read. The words seemed to blur before my eyes, their meaning too absurd to comprehend. According to the forged document, my Lamborghini was deemed an unregistered nuisance vehicle that was subject to repossession for neighborhood compliance. The letter was filled with legal jargon and bureaucratic doublespeak, all designed to lend an air of legitimacy to the outrageous claim. And at the bottom of the page, in bold black letters, was a signature purporting to be that of the HOA president. My blood ran cold. This was beyond anything I could have imagined. Karen hadn't just sold my car. She had fabricated an elaborate scheme to justify her actions, using forged documents and stolen identities to create a false narrative. She had clearly put a significant amount of time and effort into this deception, meticulously crafting a web of lies designed to protect herself from the consequences of her illegal actions. But there was one glaring flaw in her plan, a fatal error that would ultimately unravel her entire charade. I knew the actual HOA president, Robert Thompson, reasonably well. We occasionally chatted at neighborhood events, and I had seen his signature countless times on official documents. The signature on the forged notice was a clumsy imitation, a poor attempt to replicate Robert's distinctive style. It was a blatant forgery, and I knew I could prove it. I was friends with the real HOA president. He would be furious that his identity had been stolen. We didn't vote on anything. "What is she doing now?" he asked, bewildered by what he heard. "Trying to sell my car," I replied, my voice filled with incredulity. After a long pause, he said, "Oh, hell no." 10 minutes later, Robert Thompson, the actual HOA president, arrived at my house, his face flushed with anger and disbelief. He was accompanied by 2 other HOA board members, both of whom looked equally incensed. The air crackled with righteous indignation as they listened to my account of Karen's audacious scheme, their expressions shifting from disbelief to outrage with each passing detail. One of the board members, a middle-aged woman named Susan, revealed that she had already received complaints from 2 other residents regarding Karen's aggressive tactics and her tendency to overstep her authority. It seemed that I wasn't the only one who had fallen victim to Karen's power-hungry machinations. As we stood there, discussing possible courses of action, a familiar vehicle approached my driveway. It was a sleek black SUV, the kind favored by wealthy executives and high-powered professionals. As it parked behind my Lamborghini, a man emerged, dressed in loafers, Bluetooth headset in his ear, and a bill of sale clutched in his hand. It was the buyer, the unsuspecting pawn in Karen's elaborate game. He approached us with an air of confidence, his eyes fixed on my Lamborghini. He introduced himself as Mr. Henderson and stated that he had purchased the car from Karen Daniels for $30,000 cash. He claimed that Karen had represented herself as an authorized representative of the HOA, acting on their behalf to get rid of an abandoned eyesore and improve the neighborhood's overall aesthetic appeal. He was clearly under the impression that he had made a legitimate transaction, a win-win situation where he acquired a luxury vehicle at a bargain price, and the community benefited from the removal of an unwanted object. He walked towards the Lamborghini, reached for the door handle, and prepared to unlock his newly acquired prize. But then he froze. His eyes widened, His expression shifted from confident anticipation to stunned disbelief. I had stepped forward, positioned myself between him and the car, and held up my actual title and registration. The documentation displayed my name, the VIN number, the time-stamped copy of the insurance activation, and irrefutable proof that I was the legal owner of the vehicle. The silence was deafening as Mr. Henderson stared at the documents, his face paling with each passing second. He looked from the title to the car, then back to Karen Daniels' house, his confusion giving way to a dawning realization. He had been duped, conned, and manipulated by a cunning and unscrupulous woman who had taken advantage of his trust and his desire for a good deal. At that moment, I decided to drop a bombshell that would expose Karen's scheme and solidify her downfall. "The entire thing has been live-streamed to my cloud," I announced, my voice ringing with authority. "Security footage, audio recordings, the whole handshake and cash deal, all of it." I gestured towards my security cameras, their unblinking lenses serving as silent witnesses to Karen's treachery. The effect was immediate and devastating. Mr. Henderson recoiled as if he had been burned. Robert Thompson, the HOA president, immediately dialed the police, his voice trembling with anger and a sense of betrayal. The other HOA board members stood silently, their faces reflecting a mixture of shock and vindication. The trap had been set, and Karen Daniels was about to walk right into it. I could tell her side hustle days were over. As if on cue, Karen Daniels emerged from her house, strutting down the block with an air of self-importance as if she was about to receive an award. She was completely oblivious to the fact that her carefully constructed world was about to crumble around her. She approached our group with a confident smile, her pearl earrings glinting in the fading sunlight. But as she drew closer, she seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere, the palpable tension that hung in the air. Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowed, and a flicker of unease crossed her face. Before she could utter a word, the police officers arrived, their patrol cars screeching to a halt in front of my house. The flashing lights illuminated the scene, casting long shadows that danced on the pavement. Karen's eyes widened in panic as the officers approached her, their expressions stern and unyielding. This was not the welcome she had anticipated. The officers began to question her, their voices sharp and accusatory. Karen, initially defiant, attempted to maintain her composure, but her carefully constructed facade began to crack under the pressure of the investigation. She stammered, contradicted herself, and offered a series of increasingly implausible explanations. She claimed that I had donated the car to the neighborhood for community use, then switched stories and insisted that I had abandoned it after neglecting it for an extended period. Finally, she argued that she was only facilitating a resale as part of HOA beautification, acting in the best interests of the community by removing an unwanted eyesore. Her justifications were nonsensical, contradictory, and utterly unconvincing. The officers didn't buy a word of it. Mr. Henderson, realizing the extent of the deception, backed away immediately. He declared that he was filing for a full refund and wanted nothing to do with this HOA cult. He expressed his disgust at being used as a pawn in Karen's scheme and promised to pursue legal action against her to recover his losses and any damages incurred. But the craziest twist was yet to come. With Karen's permission, a colossal mistake on her part, the officers examined her phone, searching for any evidence that might shed light on her motives and her activities. What they found was far more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Buried within her contacts and messaging apps was a hidden group chat with 3 other women from nearby neighborhoods. The women, it turned out, were engaged in a similar HOA asset recovery missions, targeting properties and possessions that they deemed to be in violation of community standards. They were essentially running a clandestine side hustle, exploiting their positions of authority to enrich themselves at the expense of their neighbors. Karen wasn't just targeting me. She was part of a larger network of power-hungry individuals who were abusing their positions to line their own pockets. The scope of her actions was far more extensive and far more disturbing than I had initially suspected. The depths of her deceit were truly unfathomable. The officers escorted Karen Daniels out of my driveway, her protestations echoing through the quiet suburban street. She screamed about ungrateful residents who didn't appreciate her tireless efforts to make neighborhoods great again. Her words were laced with a twisted sense of entitlement, a belief that she was somehow doing a service to the community by imposing her own narrow-minded vision of perfection. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting that same night and unanimously voted to remove Karen Daniels from her position. Her reign of terror had come to an end, her authority stripped away, her reputation tarnished beyond repair. The other women involved in the group chat were also investigated, facing similar consequences in their respective communities. My Lamborghini, bruised but not broken, remained safely parked in my driveway. The sold sign was gone, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the importance of vigilance and security. I installed a state-of-the-art dashcam system, a high-security wheel lock, and a prominent sticker on the rear window that read, "Not HOA property. Touch it and find out." It was a clear message to any would-be thieves or power-hungry busybodies who might contemplate interfering with my property in the future. The incident had shaken me, forcing me to confront the dark underbelly of suburban life and the potential for abuse within seemingly innocuous organizations like HOAs. I learned a valuable lesson about the importance of standing up for my rights, protecting my property, and holding those in power accountable for their actions. In the aftermath of the scandal, I became an advocate for HOA reform, speaking out against the potential for corruption and advocating for greater transparency and accountability within community governance. I shared my story with other residents, empowering them to question authority, challenge injustice, and protect themselves from the abuse of power. And my Lamborghini, it became a symbol of my resilience, a reminder of the battle I had fought and won. It was more than just a car. It was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of standing up for what is right, and the triumph of justice over deceit. Every time I drove it, I was reminded of the lessons I had learned, the friends I had made, and the community I had helped to protect. Karen Daniels may have tried to steal my car, but in the end, she only succeeded in making me a stronger, more determined, and more engaged member of my community. I was able to also file a lawsuit against her and was awarded restitution for over $100,000. I was made whole again, and Karen was facing jail time for her fraudulent actions.